Greetings. It's the fourth Sunday of Easter. I think that if you've been watching these reflections along, you know the routine by now. So if you've not yet read the readings for this Sunday, go ahead, pause the video, and go and do it. If you need a place to find them, you can go to usccb.org, and I will be here when you get back. A few weeks ago, Father Chad Arnold sent out an email to the priests of the diocese and reminded us that this Sunday is also known as Good Shepherd Sunday. Pretty obvious from the gospel, right? And that it's also World Day of Prayer for Vocations. And he suggested that this might be a good thing to preach about if we were looking for some suggestions. After I responded to him and told them that he can't tell me what to do, I thought he might actually be onto something, although I would never tell him that. Hope he's not watching. There's one thing that Father Chad said that really stuck out to me. He said that in this slower, quieter time, that people are being able to listen more carefully to the Lord's calling. Now, he was specifically referring to the Lord's call with regard to vocations, and I'm sure that that is true. I know that having a serious prayer life, and one that includes a sufficient time for quiet before the Lord, does allow us to hear and to know how the Lord is calling us to follow him and to which vocation that he's calling us. But why is that? I think we can look at the gospel for some inspiration. As Jesus says, when the shepherd is leading the sheep out of the sheepfold, the sheep hear the voice of the shepherd and they follow him. They hear his voice and they follow his voice. Now, I don't know much about sheep. I can honestly say that, but I'm just going to trust what Jesus is telling us here. How do the sheep get to know the voice of the shepherd? They spend time with the shepherd, or perhaps more accurately, the shepherd spends time with them. They've listened to his voice over a period of time, and it's become familiar. They didn't just simply one day wake up and know what the voice of the shepherd was. It took time, it took growth and experience. We're just like those sheep. Far too often, we expect to be able to understand and to follow God's will simply because we've made the determination that we're going to do so. And as admirable as it is to make that determination to follow the Lord, and indeed we all should make that determination that we're going to follow the Lord and to follow his will in our life, if we're actually going to do it, to be able to hear, to know, and to follow the voice of our shepherd, we too have to spend time with him and grow in our appreciation of the Lord's presence and of his grace. If we think about it in this way, it might help. Imagine you're at a very loud event and you're trying to have a conversation with someone. I'm sure this is an experience that we can all relate to. Now imagine if the person that you're trying to speak to is very soft-spoken. It's going to make it that much more difficult. Or think about it another way. As children are learning to speak, it can often be very difficult to understand what they are trying to say to us. Sometimes we might be able to guess, or sometimes some things are clearer than others, and we can get it, but often we end up looking to their parents to help us. Well, why is it easier for their parents sometimes to know what their children are saying? Because it's not always that parents know either, but why is it easier for them? Because they spend more time with their child. They're around them much more. They know what experiences they might be trying to relate, or the things to which they're trying to share with others. If we want to be able to follow God's will in our own lives, we must spend time with him. If we want to know the voice of Jesus, we must spend time with him. And for us, that comes in prayer. A quiet place allows us to hear his voice so much better, because the Lord often is soft-spoken. Cutting out the noise around us allows us to first remove our own distractions, but then to open ourselves up also to receive the message. And spending more time will allow us to understand better the ways that the Lord is trying to communicate with us. the things to which he is referring and how it's meant to make sense in our own lives. It's often helpful to also have others who help us along the way, people with whom we can speak about this. Jesus, as our good shepherd, has brought us together not just as people who sit apart from one another, but together as members of a community of faith. Even as separated as we are in these days, we are still bound together by our common baptism and our common faith. Community helps us to live out our faith, to live out those ways that the Lord is calling us. And this is where our prayer for vocations is so important. If we want to have priests and religious who are in our communities and serve our communities, then we need to pray that those being called by the Lord will both hear and answer that call. And we need to provide a space for them to be able to do that, to hear and to respond. A place that they can hear the Lord and learn what it means to respond to Him, no matter what their vocation is. We have to cultivate an environment in which vocational discernment is fostered, supported, and in fact encouraged. We need to have this at a diocesan level, of course, but we also have to have it at a parish level. And we need to have it in each one of our homes. So I encourage you to think about and to pray about this, to pray for vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life, and find ways that you too might be able to support those who are in that process of discernment, whatever the discernment might be. And if you're still trying to discern your own vocation, spend time in prayer with the Lord. I mean, we all must do this, but it is so much. It is the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish that if we spend time in prayer with the Lord. A deeply rooted prayer life will help us on the journey no matter what our vocation is. If you're called to marriage, it will give you the solid foundation you need upon which to build the domestic church as a family. If you're called to the priesthood, it will give you that connection with the Lord that you will need to help others on their own journey of faith. If you're called to consecrated life, it will begin that relationship with the Lord that will necessarily be the center of your experience as one consecrated to Him. I know this is one of my longer reflections, but I really believe that what we do, both to allow ourselves to hear the voice of the shepherd and to help others to do so, especially in the context of vocational discernment, will only help us to create an even better community of people joined together in faith, striving for a deeper unity with Jesus and providing a much needed witness to the world around us of what it means to be disciples of the Lord. Let us continue to pray for one another, to pray that we might hear the voice of the Lord and respond to it each day. And may God bless each one of you.